Welcome back. So in the last lecture we got to a point where we managed to dynamically create datepickers when we added a new input field with a unique ID to our HTML markup, but in the process we lost the ability to display correct year, and we never really had the ability to dynamically display the months. So we're going to take care of that in this lecture, but for now let's just start with a very quick cleanup. So what we have here is, I realize there's too much indentation, so I'm just going to jump into HTML so I get access to some handy features here in my editor. So we're going to go all the way to the left. We can open it back up and we can go back to JavaScript now. Right, so this was one. Let's close this method so it doesn't take too much space. Then I wanted to get rid of a couple of console logs that we don't need. It could be the only one, actually. I think that was the only one. And obviously we don't need these holiday, star, holiday, and date pickers anymore, so I'm just going to delete, including some of this empty space here. Right, I think that looks okay now. Everything is still working as intended. That's great. So let's just remind ourselves how our datepicker blueprint should look like and how it should work. I've added the logic chart to the project so you can find it on GitHub as well, just like with the current code. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger so it's visible. So we've got these three properties: unique ID, start date, end date. We don't have the default year and the month and the current year and the month, but we do need them because the default year and month will determine the current year and month, based upon which we will render the years in the dropdown and the months in the dropdown. And in the next lecture we are going to be rendering the days of the month in the calendar view, and once we got this we will be able to create some actions using these properties and functionalities. So let's go ahead and add these two properties and also pass them in. So we're going to go to, let's close this, and right here with these properties we're just going to say this default year and month will be equal to the default year and month we're passing in, and then we're going to have a current year and month which will be equal to the default year and month, just for the time being. Right, and let's make sure we're passing them in as well when the objects are created. So here we're just going to say default year and month, and we're going to set it to, let's say 2020. Let's do last month, so we're going to put 11 there. All right, and let's add a method here, or well, we can just do it after the after it's created. We can just console log out the datepicker just to see if it works as intended. So let's see what we have here. We've got the default year and month 2020 11. So yeah, that looks okay. Now, where should we start populating these years? Best to just create a new method because it's not part of strictly adding the HTML markup. We can just create one that we're going to call set header year and month range. So I've defined this method, and we also need to make sure that we call this method, and probably the best place to call this method will be as a last step of this add HTML. So after the HTML markup is added, these properties are defined, then we're going to set up the year and month range. And let's close this back. And here we can actually reuse some of the code that we had originally in the app.js. So I'm just going to grab everything that I have here, copy to the clipboard, and just paste it in here, uncomment it, so we can better see what's going on. And then we can sort of refactor the code and rename some of the properties, reassign some of the values that have changed. Let's just have a look. So we're starting with a from start date. We can just make it into a start date. But actually we do not need, let's just get rid of this. We do not need these start dates at all, because we can get the start years directly from these object properties. So from here. So we don't need, and we don't need to call them from, because they're not tied to any specific input or date picker. So here we're just going to say this start date. Okay, I shouldn't have pressed that, it's just an accident. And here we're going to say this end date. Now we still need to make sure that we pass them as integers once we subtracted or extracted the first 4 characters. And then we have this loop here for populating the years. So we don't have this start year anymore, this from start year. We have the start year, and we don't have the from end year. We have the end year. Now we still need to create an option element, and the value still needs to be I. The text still needs to be I, but the date picker has to be the one we're actually applying our logic to. We need to exchange the single quotes to backticks so we can get access to template literals. And we're going to say here this unique ID. So it's automatically the to and from and whichever else ID is populated in automatically. And then in the pick year select, as part of that date picker, will be added an option element with these values. Right, so if I'm correct, now we should get the years automatically populated. We've got 18 through 21. Let's do a quick change here. Let's make this 2011, 2025, nicely far away in the future. And we've got 2011 through to 2025. Let me see if that works for the 2 as well. Yes, works just fine. Right, so we can just reverse these defaults. And we can now start thinking about the months. And this is where I'm going to introduce you to the Moment.js library. This is a JavaScript library, very popular to handle date, times, time zones, different date formats. It has loads of methods where you can compare, like which is before, which is after. You can check if what weekday a certain date is on, whether it's a leap year, how many days are in that month. So loads of handy methods. I can actually do a test here once we import it. So let me just go and grab the import code for our index.html file. So there's loads of ways to edit, one of which is using a CDN. I'm going to put this script into the description below so you can just copy it, and hopefully it'll still work when you're using it. You might need to change the date version, the version number if it gets outdated. But anyway, you can find this Moment.js CDN library very easily if you just do a Google search. So let's go back to Datepicker. And now we have access to some Moment.js functionalities. So if I just go ahead and say console log moment, I'm creating a new date with the default JavaScript date object, and I'm going to pass in this start date. We're going to see what we get. So we get a moment object, you can see here. So it's it says by default Friday, November the 30th, 2018. And then you've got a number of methods here, like what I referred to already, the days in the month. So if I put here, that's where it ends, days in month, right? I'm gonna get here 30. So November was 30. Or if I go for, let's choose another one, ISO weekday. Let's go for the ISO weekday. ISO weekday. Let's see what we get. Probably I misspelled it. Yeah. So small d. Highlight it. So it's going to say 5, meaning it's the 5th day of the week because it's a Friday. So you've got loads of handy methods, and we're just going to use a fraction of all these available methods. But you can kind of see how it's going to get useful. Also, you can have different ways of outputting, and this is one of the most useful things that we're going to also use today. So you've got the format method available here, and you can say you want the format in YYY DD. In this case, you get it in this format, so 4-digit year, 2-digit month, and 2-digit days. If you change this to just YYMMD, then you're going to just get a 2-digit year if you change this to 3M, you're going to get the abbreviated month. If you change this to 4Ms, you're going to have the full month name. So you probably get the idea why I want to use Moment.js. It's just very handy to manipulate date, also time as well, but we don't need time for this project. So let's just comment this out as we don't need it, but we're going to need a couple of variables in order to iterate through the range of years and months that are between the start and the end date. And initially I will create just an iterator variable just to keep track of where we are in the process. So it will be called iteration date, and it will be a very simple moment object where I'm creating a new JavaScript date using the start date. Then, because I'm not going to use Moment.js's comparison functions, because you can, if you use this ISO format that I showed you here, so the 4-digit year, 2-digit month, and 2-digit day, it's very easy to compare them just as alphabetical strings. So you don't need to invoke any Moment.js functions. If you use this format, you can just compare them as strings, and it's probably less verbose, and you can do that very easily without Moment.js, and that's the route I'm going to take. But there are loads of methods in Moment.js, like the say more before, is after, etc., that you can use to compare dates. It's not necessary for this project at this stage. So, and this is why I'm going to create a also a variable which is called it's going to look a bit weird, but it's called iteration date YYYYMM, just to make it clear what format it will be. And this will be very similar to what we have here, but it will be formatted format, and the format will be, as I referred to it in the name, YYYYMM. And we also need this one actually needs to be a let, because this will also change. And what will not change is the end date, and I'm going to create it as similarly to the start date, but I'm using the end date here, and we're going to have an end date YYYYMM, which will be the same but format to YYYYMM. Actually, I could just replace this with iteration date, because that's a moment object already. Same here, I can just say end date, because this is a moment object already, right? So let's just see if these are all working fine, that we're not getting any undefined or any null. Well, if we're getting something for the YYYMM, we're probably getting something for the original object as well. So I'm just gonna console log these. Yeah, so we get the object here, which is this one, and then we get the 2018 11 and 2021 03. Right, that's all good. As a next step, we will need a while loop where we're going to say that as long as the iteration date YYYMM is less or equal to the end date YYYYMM, then we're going to do the following. Now we have to be very careful here because it's a while loop, so it can make our browser break if the iteration date never gets to the end date. So best to start with the logic that makes sure the iteration date gets to the end date. And the way we're going to do, now this is where we're going to use moment, and this is also why we define them as let instead of const. So we're going to say iteration date equals iteration date, and remember this is a moment object, so we can call moment methods on it. Add 1, comma, and month as a string, so it has to be plural. That's important. And then we're going to say iteration date YYYYMM will be equal to iteration. I think we can even copy this from here. I don't need to type it out again. And we can here console log, just to show you how the process is done. We can console log this here. This should show us the months we're currently doing. Actually, let me just put it here so all months are included. Right? So when I highlight this, we should get all the years and the months here in a row. And here we go. We start 2018 11 to 2021 03, and that's exactly our range here. And what we can do is we can do something very similar that we did here. Let's just grab the option creation little snippet here. We need to create an option element. That's right. Option value I. We don't have any I here, so we need to replace this with remember, we still have access to the iteration date, and the iteration date also changes every time the while loop runs a circle. So we can just say iteration date without the YYYMM. So we don't need the string, we need the object. So we have access to its handy methods, and we can say for the value we need the double-digit number, and for the text we can go for the abbreviated version, but I prefer to have the full month name displayed. And then we need to make sure that we're inserting it into the relevant date picker and the pick month select, and we're appending the child. We made sure already that the while loop won't go crazy and it will stop when it has to stop. So if we run it, we should see some nice results. It's run already. We've got our years, and we got quite a number of months, and seems to be messy because it starts with January, February, March, then November, where it's supposed to start. So yeah, so the problem is that obviously we've got some hard-coded stuff in our markup, which has already moved to the Datepicker.js. I can't keep up with myself, to be honest. But yeah, let's just jump back into HTML. So the hotkeys will use the correct commenting out syntax for the months. Just grab the hard-coded options and comment them out, similarly to what we did with the years. Save it, and let's jump back into JavaScript mode. So the initial January, February, March should disappear. Yeah, they're gone. So now we just need to make sure that there's only 1 year worth of months are displayed, and the ones that are relevant for the year. So for 2018, we just need November and December. For 2021, we just need January, February, and March. So it looks like we need some sort of a condition set here. And the quickest solution I can see is basically just saying if, again, let's access the iteration date object. We could extract some of the string as well, but we can just use the iteration date object, call the format method, and we need the 4-digit version. And we need to pass it as an integer, because the value we are going to check against hasn't yet been created. So what we need to do here, we need to create a current year value, which will be very similar to this. We're just calling a different property, and the property we're calling is the current year and month, and we just need the first 4 digits. And this is an integer now, similar to these. We could leave it as strings, but for consistency's sake, let's just make it into an integer. And where did we leave it? We left it here, and we're going to compare it to the current year. Now this should be colored dark blue because it's a constant, and it's not. It's a bit worrying. Oh, now it's got the right color. All right. I was worried that I'm making some sort of a syntax error. And now when we copy this into the if statement, make sure you don't copy the iterator where the dates are incremented, because if you copied it into the if statement and the current year is different from the iteration date, the while loop will never stop, so you will get into an infinite loop. So make sure that bit stays outside of the if statement, and it runs on every occasion the while loop runs. Okay, so I think we are there. Let me just see. So 2018 still shows January, of course, because yeah, so it's not dynamic, right? We have to go, because the default year and month is 2020, and right now they're not displayed here. So okay, let's just not test it yet. What we should do is we should make sure that the current date and the month is correctly displayed here. And the way we can achieve that is document query selector, and let's remind ourselves what it's called. It's called this one here for the month, Well, let's start with the year. And the way you highlight a value and display this by default is just simply accessing the value property of this select element and set it equal to, now the year, what the year has to be. Very simple, it's the current year that we used already. Again, it's not being highlighted as a constant. Not sure why. It looks like some issue with VS Code. Let's do the same for the month. Can you please get copied? Thank you. And just exchange this to month. And this one will be, you can access the current year and month property. And for the year, we used to substring from the 0th place to from the 0th, counting 4 characters from the 0th place. And for the month, we need to count from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we need 2 characters. So I'm going to say substring, start at number 5, go 2 characters. Right. Now, let's see what we get. 2020 November, right? Is that our start date? Yes. Let's see how many months we have in 2020. That's great. Let's change to 2018. We should have just 2 months there. 2018, only 2 months. Now let's change to 2021. Let's go for January. And we've got 3 months for 2021. And let's go 2020. We can keep it January. So we got the years, we got the months, and we got all the months for the year, because they are included in our range fully. Now, what if we do 2021-11, the default year and month? So you got a problem. There's no default selected. So this is something that we need to take care of in another lesson, like have a fallback logic in case someone, let's say, when we add the functionality to switch from switch between years, it's possible that someone is left on a month which is not available in a different year, and when they switch year, we need to have a fallback logic of what month to set as current month in those cases. But this is something we will take care of in another lecture. So this does it for today. I hope you found it valuable, and in the next lecture we're actually going to take care of populating the correct dates for a given month. So stay tuned, and I see you next time.